today I'm going to show you how to throw a cylinder for beginning throwing. So I've already set up my splash pans and have my bat on the wheel. Things I have a bucket of water, I have a sponge, I have a metal rib, a needle tool, a wooden tool, and a chamois cloth. So these are the things you'll need. I also have a couple just balls of clay ready, about a pound. So they're about the size of a baseball. And I'm going to get it nice and round, and then I'm going to start by putting it in the middle. So notice I didn't put any water down before this. I want to keep it nice and dry underneath because the moisture of the clay will make it stick. If you have water, your clay will slide around on you. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my clay wet because I always want to have moisture on my clay. And then I'm going to brace my arms on to my legs, my knees, because a triangular form is very strong. It's going to keep you nice and balanced, whereas if you're sitting up, then your clay can wobble everywhere. So if I'm leaning forwards on my knees, it's going to help me center my clay. So I'm going to use this palm of my hand right here, and I'm going to be using my right hand, kind of this part of my right hand to press down. So you want to create equilibrium. Centering is all about balance. So I'm going to be pressing in from the side and pressing down from the top, and it's going to create a balance to help you get the wobble out of your clay. So I'll show you what that looks like here. Okay, so if I start to press too much from the top, my clay is going to turn flat like a pancake. Or if I start to press too much from the side, it's going to be a wobbly mess. So I need a nice balance in between the two. So I kind of think about pressing down on my clay and pressing it into my left hand, which is here waiting and ready for it. Now you want kind of a mushroom shape when you center, so a nice rounded shape. You don't want it to be flat because that's really hard to work with, and you don't want it to be like super tall and thin. You want a nice in-between rounded shape like this. So notice my clay isn't wobbling, it's nice and rounded, it's flat on top, it's balanced all the way through. So if your clay isn't balanced, you're going to run into problems later. Now if you're struggling with centering, a technique you can use is called coning, where you take your clay and you just squeeze it with both hands kind of into a cone, kind of like that, and then you can press it back down into your left hand from the top, and that can sometimes help you get it back to center. Alright, so I'm going to get the shape that I like. And I'm going to keep my clay wet because if it's not slick, you're going to have resistance and your clay is going to get off center. And if your clay gets off center, your pot will not make it. Alright, next thing I'm going to do is called opening up the clay. So I'm going to rest my right hand in my left, and I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to start kind of going in at an angle. So I'm not going straight down into the clay. I'm kind of going from the side, and I'm going to angle into the middle. I'm going to make sure my finger's slick. Holding, so I'm holding my right hand to help balance and not throw my pot off center. And then what I want to do is I want to get down to about 1/4 inch from the bat. So I'm going to stop my wheel, and I'm going to take my needle tool. I'm going to put my finger on my needle tool. I'm going to poke the clay with my needle tool all the way down to the bottom, slide my finger to where my needle tool meets the clay, and pull it out. So I have about 1/4 inch thickness, which is exactly what I want. Next thing I'm going to do is I want to pull my clay out a little bit. Now, we want this to be a cylinder or like a cup, so we don't want it to be a bowl. So you don't want to like pull it all the way out. I just want to pull it out to where the opening is about this big or so. So I'm going to take my finger, I'm going to hook my finger like this, and again I'm holding it with my left hand. Always support everything that you do. And I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom, and I'm going to hook my finger and pull out just a little bit. Okay, so I don't want it to be too wide, just wide enough to help me get my sponge in there. And then I'm going to compress the bottom, so I'm just pressing down on the bottom till it's nice and smooth and pretty. It helps prevent cracking and just make sure it gives a nice polished look to your piece. And so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start pulling the walls up. Now this is where we get the vertical height. So you know we talked about equilibrium whenever we were centering. The same thing has to happen here when we make our walls get taller. So I'm going to keep my left fingers on the inside, and I'm going to keep my right hand fingers behind a sponge on the outside. Now I'm working in kind of the 5 o'clock position. If this were a clock, it's about in the 5 o'clock spot, kind of in the bottom right hand corner. You never want to work up at the top or on, like way on the sides. You always want to work in the bottom right hand corner. So I'm going to put pressure starting at the very bottom. I'm going to gently squeeze inside and out, left hand on the inside, right hand on the outside. I'm squeezing the pressure as it spins, and I'm going to squeeze evenly all the way up. I'm going to do it a couple times to get the height that I want. Now, if you're not putting the same amount of pressure inside and out, then you're going to notice your walls will either cave in or start caving out, whichever it is that you're missing. All right, so every time I pull up, I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to compress the rim. So it's getting a little out of control. I'm going to compress the rim like that, okay? All right, and I'm going to pull again, this time with a little bit more pressure. So you have to really pay attention to the amount of pressure that you're using, because if you are using way too much, you're going to tear your clay and lose your pot. And I'm compressing the rim again. So notice even on mine right here, it's curving in a little bit. My pressure wasn't even, so I have to go back and fix that. I'm going to do one more pull. All right. Okay, so this is my basic cylinder. All of my walls are about 1/4 of an inch thick, which is exactly what you want. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to shape it into a cup. So there are a couple things I need to do. So I'm going to make sure, my fingers are slick. I'm going to use my metal rib. I'm going to curve the rib like this. And I'm always, so remember we always talked about balancing out what you're doing. I'm going to put my fingers on the inside and use them to press the clay into the metal rib on the outside. I like to get rid of the throwing marks. Some people like them. I like to clean up my pieces. And if you want to give your pot, your cup a little bit of a curve, this is the time to do it. Always kind of start at the bottom and work your way up. And just be really gentle as you pull off so you don't knock your pot off center. All right, I have the curve that I want. All right, now at this step, you may have a little bit of a problem with your rim. If your rim is uneven, you need to trim the top. So what you're gonna have to do is bracing your arm on your knee, as always. I'm gonna put my left finger inside, bottom right-hand corner, 5 o'clock position. And like a record player, I'm gonna very gently press my needle tool into the clay. So I'm not gonna stab the needle tool into my clay because you'll hurt your pot. Instead, I'm going to gently rest, and you'll see the lines coming. I have my left finger behind the needle tool on the inside, and I'm gently kind of pressing the needle tool into my finger. So it's going to take about 4 rotations before the needle tool goes all the way through. And then when it does, you'll get a nice ring to cut off if you have an uneven top. Now, a couple other things to finish up. So if I, if I just cut my rim, I want my rim to be nice and smooth. So when people drink from it, it's not rough on their lips. So what you need to do is take a chamois cloth like this, and you're going to kind of pinch the top edge of the chamois cloth. And I'm going to take this top edge and I'm going to lay it over the top and just kind of press down. So I'm just kind of curving the rim, putting a nice little curve on the rim is all I'm doing. So once it's nice and curved, that's all I gotta do. All right, then I'm gonna take my wooden tool and I'm gonna trim away some of this extra clay. Now we're gonna have to come back and trim later, but I wanna try to get rid of some of this extra clay now. So I'm just kind of gently pressing the wooden tool into the clay at an angle until I hear it hit the bottom, and then then I can scrape away this extra stuff, and then the rest will clean up after the pot sets up overnight. All right, so that's how you throw a cylinder. Now all I have to do is take the bat off of the wheel, and I'm going to cover this loosely with plastic so you can see the inside there. I'm going to cover this loosely with plastic, and then next time we should be able to add a handle and trim off the bottom.